The Black Death entered medieval life through ordinary routes of trade and travel, then turned daily routines into risks. What began as a chain of tiny contacts, rats nesting in cargo, fleas feeding, hands touching bedding, cloth, and skin, quickly became a terrifying pattern of symptoms people could recognize but could not explain. Fever, weakness, and painful swellings appeared with shocking speed, and households that had been built around shared space and constant contact abruptly became places of isolation and dread. In towns and ports, uncertainty spread faster than information. People relied on rumor, religious interpretation, and improvised prevention because no institution could provide a reliable cure. As deaths rose, the first visible transformation was the sound and rhythm of community. Bells marked the loss of neighbors, carts moved through streets to collect the dead, and doors were marked as warnings. Public life narrowed, shutters closed, gatherings thinned, and the marketplace, normally the economic and social heart of a town, began to empty. Fear reshaped behavior in ways that were both practical and symbolic. People washed with vinegar, carried herbs, and sought spiritual protection through prayer, relics, and processions, even as those rituals sometimes increased contact and risk. These early responses reveal a society trying to defend itself with the tools it had: faith, habit, and local authority, while confronting a disaster that overwhelmed them. The plague attacked not only bodies but also trust. Trust in neighbors, in public spaces, in food and water, and even in spiritual certainty. The result was a rapid shift from communal life to guarded survival, where every open door, shared cup, and crowded street began to feel dangerous. That emotional pressure, panic, grief, guilt, and exhaustion, set the stage for the deeper transformations that followed. When the plague thinned populations, it broke the medieval economy at its most basic level: labor. Fields went untilled, harvests spoiled, and animals that once powered agriculture were left underused because there were fewer hands to manage them. Food shortages could appear even in fertile regions, not because land had vanished, but because the work of planting, reaping, storing, and transporting could not be sustained. In manors and villages, empty cottages and abandoned plots became a visible measure of loss, and the countryside began to look patchy, productive in one place, silent in another. This scarcity of workers shifted bargaining power in ways that shocked older social structures. Survivors could demand higher wages, better terms, or the right to move, while lords and city officials tried to restrain those changes through new rules and enforcement. Guilds faced vacancies and accelerated promotions. Workshops reopened under new leadership. Apprentices stepped into roles once reserved for older masters. These changes did not erase hardship. Many were still hungry, frightened, and grieving, but they altered what was possible for people who previously had little leverage. Tension followed naturally. Where authorities tried to freeze wages and control movement, resentment built, and conflict flared. A posted decree could become a symbol of injustice, a spark for unrest, and a reason for court action. At the same time, practical public measures grew more common. barriers, inspections, and health edicts reflect the start of administrative responses to crisis. In the Middle Years, medieval society was not simply collapsing or recovering. It was being renegotiated under pressure, with new habits forming in streets, workshops, farms, and law courts. After the worst waves, the plague's legacy remained written into everyday life. Even when trade resumed and streets grew busier, communities carried a permanent awareness of vulnerability. Rules about movement and quarantine, habits of washing, and cautious distance in crowded places were not temporary reactions. They became part of how towns understood public safety. Death had reordered households through inheritance, land transfers, and estate division, forcing families to rebuild lineages, property, and identity from reduced numbers. Religion and culture also changed in visible, complicated ways. The scale of loss strained clergy and weakened confidence in traditional explanations, while acts of charity and caregiving expanded beyond earlier expectations of who should do that work. At the same time, art and public imagery increasingly confronted mortality directly. Commissions turned grief into warnings and remembrance, and motifs like the Dance of Death captured a social truth that felt unavoidable, that status offered no guarantee of protection. Communities mourned with fewer ceremonies, yet the emotional weight of mourning became more concentrated and personal. By the end, the story is not only about catastrophe, but about adaptation shaped by trauma. Labor relations shifted, institutions adjusted, and new social possibilities appeared alongside lingering fear. The final act of writing, the chronicler recording what happened, signals an awareness that life had crossed a boundary into a different era. The Middle Ages did not end because of the Black Death, but everyday medieval life was transformed. How people worked, worshipped, governed, married, cared for the sick, and imagined death changed in ways that endured for generations.